later on in the show. We got linebacker David Long in the noon hour. I think you're really going to enjoy the conversation that we're going to have with him. And we got Greg Cosell thoughts on Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay defense, given that this team is going to travel today if they're not already in the air. We welcome your participation, as always. 615-737-1045 is the number. 615-737-1045. What if you were in attendance at the stadium practice last night? I want to hear how it went for people. I think that's the biggest question that I have coming out of that. You know, there were some takeaways on the field and some really interesting comments by Josh Reynolds in the post-game media availability that we had with him, and we'll share some of that stuff with you later on in the show. Something that I think should, I think that you can look at it and be concerned, but I don't think that the concern should be overwhelming. I'll explain what I mean by that later on. But if you went to the stadium practice last night, and I know many of you did, because I saw a lot of people, Lucas. I wish you would have gone, honestly, because it was cool to see how many people listened to the show and how many people were taking pictures of the shirt I was wearing. You don't even question my fashion choices anymore. You just roll with it. But apparently, the chubby shirt was quite the show.
I'm wearing a shirt with a bunch of chili peppers on it. So
no, I know. Like both of us, I think, are a little more daring in our fashion sense. But it was a hit last night at the stadium practice, and it was good to see a lot of people out there. So what was your experience like if you were in attendance? 615-737-1045. Traffic-wise, getting in and out of the stadium, concession-wise, outside of the football on the field, because I'm sure you enjoyed that. There was a lot to enjoy yesterday. You got to see a lot of the things that we've been talking about for the better part of 3 months at this point. Not a lot of fans have gotten to see this team as presently constructed, given that training camp practice hasn't been open. So what observations did you make? Did you notice Des Fitzpatrick drop another pass? Or did you see the plays that he made later in 11-on-11? Did you see Ryan Tannehill hit an 80? I mean, I don't know if it was an 80-yard bomb, but it was 50-plus yards at least. I didn't get the exact yardage on it. The PA guy, he could have done us a solid, Lucas. The first appearance for the new voice of Nissan Stadium, the job that you auditioned for. This man, I don't know his name. Respectfully, I may not learn it because it's not you. But he did not give us down and distance in the stadium. He did not give us the yardage on the field goal attempts.
Uh-oh.
He did not give us the length of the pass from Ryan Tannehill to Josh Reynolds. A beautiful dive and catch.
So what, you're just getting pass complete to whoever the player was? And that was it?
Yeah. First down Titans. Ooh, 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 or whatever, however it goes. Oh. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, step it up. I know it's preseason for everybody.
Everybody needs reps.
But I'm listening to this guy.
Everybody needs reps.
It's fine. Everybody needs reps. But this is what I'm saying, Lucas. Like, I'm actually paying attention to the PA guy in the stadium because you didn't get that job. And I'm harboring, I don't even think you're this kind of bitter. I'm harboring this kind of bitterness. So every time, I would never listen to, respectfully, I would never listen to the PA guy before. There's no reason to, because we got press box PA when we're at the games and stuff like that. But apparently the press box, I think it was filled with new season ticket holders. So media, they let the vermin down on the field for the first time since 2019, which was delightful. It's been a long time. Felt like home. But now I'm hypercritical of the public address announcer because that was your job. You should have had it.
Well, I would have given the yards and the down and distance, but that's beside the point.
Are you sure? Doing the analysis in retrospect, always a strength of this show. Open practice last night, says Matt Snyder on YouTube, was really awesome. Really great job by the Titans organization to make it more than just a practice. That, I think, was an observation of mine. And listen, I'm going to get to Tim Tebow here in a second because that's honestly the biggest news story in the NFL today. Of course it is. Fifth-string tight end gets cut, and everybody loses their minds because it's Tebow. And I got a great stat from Andrew Siciliano of the NFL Network about two quarterbacks that had come in the 2010 draft that still remained in the NFL, and one of them being Tim Tebow. I'll share that with you later on. But that's really what I noticed is they made more of an effort to put on a show for the fans. Because like practice is, listen, it is a great it's a great gig that I have to be able to go to football practice every day and be a part of press conferences and interview professional athletes. On and on it goes. It's a lot of fun. But like a lot of times when you've seen one practice, you've seen a lot of practices. But for the fans, they really found ways to engage differently. Ryan Tannehill threw a dude a pass. It was like they were doing giveaways like during the practice, and the players were were part of the activation. Ryan Tannehill was going to throw a dude a pass, and if he caught the pass from Ryan Tannehill, he wins $500. Dude caught the pass. They put him on the Jumbotron. He won $500. With the open tackling drill, this is something that the PA announcer did well. We will give credit where credit is due. They were doing the one-on-one tackling drill where offense goes to one side, defense goes to the other. It's defensive backs versus wide receivers. It's linebackers versus running backs. These kind of things, right? And Mike Vrabel's officiating the whole thing. It's the closest thing that we can have to Bull in the Ring in 2021. Thank God that drill is gone. Hated that in high school football. So they're doing the open field tackling drill, and like they're announcing the combatants kind of in the stadium as each pair comes into the middle of the ring where the offense and defense are lined up. They got John Robinson speaking to the crowd in the middle of the practice. They got Mike Vrabel, with you're going to be proud of our toughness in Tampa, which, listen, you're a football coach. These are things that football fans want to hear. But I thought I don't know, something about that made me laugh because, I know what Vrabel's like at our post-game press conferences, and that side of him, it's not the side that I'm used to seeing anyway. But I thought they really did a good job to put on a show. I'd be curious to hear how the audience experienced it. However many of you, because there was 7,000 people in that stadium, which honestly, given the time that they did it, because that's probably the one big flaw out of all of this is they did it, it was from 5 to 7, and to get downtown, really any time between 3:30 and 6:30 is a bit of a nightmare. So logistically, in and out of the stadium, not ideal, but again, preseason for everybody. What did Lucas say about the PA guy? Everybody needs reps. So that was definitely something that I thought could have been planned for better logistically. I don't know whether you push it back later. Frankly, I was surprised they even got it in, given that the weather was kind of looming overhead the entire time. But that's such a stark difference from what we talked about yesterday, which is the infamous 2018 stadium practice that they just ran situational drills in 110 degrees, basically, with fans in attendance. And it was, a misery for the people out on the field. It was a misery for us. It was a misery for the fans in the stands. Like, it was just a disaster. And this was a complete 180 from an experience. That's the kind of thing you want to see when your team puts on those kind of events. So I think from that standpoint, they accomplished a lot. And by the way, Julio Jones didn't do anything yesterday. But late in that practice, when Julio Jones comes just casually walking out of the tunnel, completely unassuming, he's got his 2 jersey on and he's in sweats. But the roar from 7,000 people just to see a dude walk out and give the pageant wave. Julio! Oh, yeah. It was that times, 7,000. It was pretty crazy. I think that the amount of excitement, which is cool to see, and we'll talk about that later in the show. Again, David Long is going to join us, Titans linebacker, who's really been a standout at camp and certainly had a big performance in the preseason game, one of several defenders who did. Coming up next, though, I want to talk about on-field observations that we made at the stadium practice and what's happening with Josh Reynolds. Because he was, maybe it's just I'm grading on a scale of Mike Vrabel, but he was uncommonly honest about the kind of stuff that he's working through. And I think fans who want to understand better how this wide receiving core is shaping up, and us, I don't think it's just we want answers to the questions that we're asking about injuries. No, it gives us better context for how to judge these guys. Now, I in the football world, that is called excuse making, and you can't have excuse making in football because, put your hand in the dirt, drool, and growl or whatever. I just think it's stupid. But what Josh Reynolds had to say about his situation, I think you're really going to find interesting. We'll get into that coming up next. And later on in the show, we will, and Tim Tebow. I have to talk about Tim Tebow. I want to know who people blame. today more than anything with Team Tebow. Because, Lucas, I had an uncommon moment of self-awareness, like I was becoming the thing that I hate. Like I was the person who was lazily making fun of Tim Tebow when he was trying to strive for, his last gasps at athletic greatness. And then I was made to feel sad when I saw his tweet today announcing that he had been cut from the Jags.
Oh, he broke you.
He did, man. He got me. I felt bad. Well, it's just, okay, here's what we'll do. I'll explain why I feel bad for Tim Tebow, why I'm more pissed at Urban Meyer, and why I'm most pissed at the people who bought Tim Tebow Jaguars jerseys. Because every one of you, I don't know if you're anywhere within the frequency of this radio station, but if you are out there, just know that you are the worst among us in sports. For the what, 2 month and a half that this guy ended up lasting on the roster? Unbelievable. Caden Jones wants to know, Buck, how's your Twitter thread doing being part of the fam threat? What the hell is J. Martin Ramon doing in the morning? I walked in here. It's pitch black. Jason has my great aunt's horse blinder sunglasses on. What did he do to his eyes? What happened to him? Do you have any idea?
No.
No. Was it not pitch black when I walked into the studio today? Like they're living in this cave. I know it's dark when they wake up and come in here to do morning radio because I'm sure it ages you. So I don't know if they're just having light sensitivity now.
Schaefer is here. I think he has a very good explanation for you.
Please do, Schaefer.
He's on his way in.
Okay, very good.
Take your time. Good. He's very.
Take your time. It's not like I'm doing a live. Take your time. It's not like I'm doing a live radio show here. There's a microphone right in the production studio. You have to walk in here.
Eager.
That's because Lucas is on that one.
You can't share. Well, that's I guess against the protocol. He's just waving a mask at me on Zone TV.
Because of Jason's recent eye surgery, having everything turned down, he was able to see better. It's that simple.
Okay, that is what you walked in here to tell me.
I mostly came in here to crash your show because I don't respect you.
What does J. Martin Ramon respect? Because it's sure as hell not my mentions. What is this thread? Explain to me before I spend the next segment.
Explain it. I can't.
What are your people doing? Get them in line.
They're being the fam.
Oh, my God.
They're being themselves.
That's so awful.
They dragged Mike Golick Jr. into it. They're trying to drag Ryan Clark into it. We're getting wonderful sponsorship from Barbasol right now.
Well, that's impressive.
They've started their own fantasy league. They're starting their own fan gear related to the show.
Okay, that is all well and good.
Yeah.
The show is a community.
Mm-hmm.
This show has its own community. It is less wholesome than the morning show community, I will admit.
I don't know if I'd say that.
Maybe not. But I don't understand why said fam feels the need to pull everybody else in. Surely Golick Jr. cannot be enjoying what is happening in his mentions right now.
Because it's funny.
There's a point. There's a point where the horse is dead, and you have to stop beating it, Schaefer.
No, it's day 12. They're doing it on their own. We're not encouraging them to do it. They're doing it on their own volition.
Cousin Tower on YouTube says, thread is life. Fam is life, Buck. Oh. J. Martin Ramon, 6 to 10 a.m. or basically for 12 days in your Twitter mentions.
You guys just want to joke around about the fam and not take it seriously. And I'm like, look, you go in there, they'll cut you.
No, it's true. It's true. They are a vocal minority.
They will unleash their inner Wayne Brady.
Lucas, did you get that?
Absolutely.
That reference? Okay.
Get out of here.
Very good. I did not. We'll come back and talk about.
God.
We'll come back and talk
man.
about Josh Reynolds. I'm Buck
Bell
Reising.
Show.
This is 104.5 The Zone.
Coming up today on the 3HL.
We'll talk Titans football with Jim Wyatt from TennesseeTitans.com.
And we got to talk numbers, sports gambling numbers. Alan Bell from Sportsline joins us.
And we got a new event, 2 for Tuesdays.
What in the world is
I
that?
just came up with
All right, we'll do it.
I'm in.
that. Tuesday, right?
Today, starting at 3 p.m. on 104.5 The Zone.
In business, it's never just another day. Every day is the day. They could bring your biggest order yet, or a new cyber threat. Whatever the day holds, with Comcast Business, you'll be prepared. With a network that can deliver gig speeds to the most businesses. Comcast Business Security Edge to help protect your connected devices, and a dedicated team available 24/7. Every day in business is a big day. We'll keep you ready for what's next. Comcast Business, powering possibilities.
Get started with a fast and reliable internet and voice solution for $35 each a month for 24 months for 2 years when you buy both. Or ask about our best deal on a gig speed bundle with a $500 prepaid card. Call 1-800-501-6000 or go to ComcastBusiness.com to learn more. Offer requires enrollment in paperless billing and autopay through My Account. Ends 9/19/21. Restrictions apply. New customers only with 35 megabits per second internet and one voice line.
respect Ramon Foster more than anybody probably here out of the collection of the Zone crew, although we do have a great cast and crew here on 104.5 The Zone. I respect Jonathan Schaefer precious little. What are you going to do? But the fam, what they have created with the community around their show is very impressive because they're very rabid. There's only like 4 or 5 of them that will come after you like on a regular basis, but they will come after you. They will be vocal. Now, Carrie Benford in the comments on YouTube, where you can watch the show on Zone TV, says, Buck, you need to come up with something for your show because this ain't the fam. This is the Real Titans Radio. Man, I mean, Will Compton brought this up last week. I don't know what do we want to call our people, Lucas? Do we even want to do that? Like, I'm not against it if it's
We've
good.
had this discussion.
No, I know. So what are you saying? I'm in reruns already?
No, but we what do we say? Bucks babies.
No, we're not doing that. Ew. Ew, what? Wait, that's the first one that you came out with?
Yeah.
Really strong candidate.
It rolls right off the tongue.
Let's not, please.
You got anything better?
I mean, no, not off the top of my head. That's why I'm asking you. This is what I'm saying. Like, I would do something like that if we could come up with something good. But like, I mean, like I said, I love Schaefer and them, but the joke has been dead for so long now. Stop. It's just there's no more life.
I'm sure we could get some ideas in the chat. I want the alliteration. That's what I want.
FaZe Riley says D-bags. Just the Buck Reising Show D-bags.
Buck Squad.
Ew. Stop. See, I hate it. Everything like that in sports is so corny. This is my biggest problem with sports talk radio as a medium. I love doing it, but there's nothing that hasn't been done a million times over, and a lot of it lazily and poorly. Now, I'm not saying that the fam is a lazy thing. That's not what I'm implying at all. I'm just saying that outside of like the thing that works, what else is there for the rest of us to feed at the same trough the people in sports talk radio have been feeding at for a million years?
You're saying our polls aren't incredibly original?
Yeah, but what are we going to call them? The pole dancers? Like, what do you want me to do here?
Yeah, I love that.
What is the pole dancer? 615-737-1045. No, I tried so hard in an email to get our poll sponsored by Deja Vu. I thought that would be incredibly creative. But alas, this is a family show. 615-737-1045. I mean, yeah, there's probably some stuff that we could get to. The chat on YouTube has gone insane. That Daddy's delinquent, says Lebowski. You guys are gross, man. This is like the Lawan thing. Like, I don't know how he's comfortable. I don't care if he wants to call himself dad, but like, I don't care about any of that. But like, is he comfortable with all of the grown men who call him dad? There were many. I can't tell you how many screams I heard yesterday for dad, and then the odd daddy by somebody who it was not, should not be saying daddy in that circumstance. Or maybe you are, but like, I don't know. 615-737-1045. This is, of course, what the phone lines are going to light up about. Joey's in Kentucky. He wants to give the people a nickname. What's up, Joey? Joey, you're on the air. I can hear your blinker.
Can you hear me?
I can hear your turn signal, Joey. Go.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I've got a couple things. First of all, if you're going to throw anything out there like that, something to name your peeps, just call them Buckshot.
Buckshot? Okay.
But I like your name because my great-grandfather's name was Buck. And that's kind of where that came from because all the grandchildren and great-grandchildren, that's what he always called them, was his little Buckshot.
Okay. That's got sentimental value. That's good, Joey. I like that.
Right. But love your show. I've tempted to call in all the time, but I'm always afraid I'm going to take up people's time and stuff, so I just don't bother.
Well, listen, you did not. We appreciate the call, Joey. Thank you. 615-737-1045. You see, I never understood people's inhibitions like that. Like, if you got something to say, I don't have a problem saying it. You can call me anytime. You can tell me whatever you want. We had a Titans fan on Facebook that wanted to fight me yesterday. I saw Tyrekus and Chris Frazier in the stands, by the way. Listen, Titans Facebook, Lucas, I want to do a weekly segment, and I know Lucas is doing a million things right now, but because today's show is complicated for a great many reasons, but I want to do a weekly segment about Titans Facebook, like this week or this month in Titans Facebook, because the stuff that happens in those groups is hilarious to me. Some of the stuff that I got tagged in that I want, and these guys are going to, I think these guys are going to provide us excellent content. But Chris Frazier, who apparently I needed to box because I disrespected him in the chat on my A to Z show at night. I saw him and Tyrekus. We broke bread. It was a beautiful thing. And then, they spent the rest of the time screaming and shouting at A.J. Brown and Mike Vrabel, like everybody else. Cousin Mark says the Egyptian god of zone. That's a little pretentious. I don't think I could do that. But a lot of these are creative. We'll get to some of the YouTube chat here in just a second. I do want to talk about the actual football that was on the field. Yeah, Chris. See, Chris is in the comments on Facebook. Chris always lurking in the comments on Facebook. Titans Facebook is a trip, man. I love it there. I want to do, Chris, you and Tyrekus, I'm tasking you with This Week in Titans Facebook, where we're getting those ridiculous videos that Tyrekus makes. I'm going to start playing them on the radio show and just kind of taking the temperature of the fan base from time to time. Now, I asked you guys, going back to the earlier conversation that we started the show with, those of you who attended the stadium practice last night, I was asking for some feedback because I'm legitimately curious. I didn't see many tweets. Every Titans game, I feel like, since I started living and working in Tennessee and covering sports, every time there's an event at the stadium that involves the team, I get tweets about how difficult admission was. Didn't see any of that yesterday. Now, V-Love has tweeted us his main takeaway from the Titans open practice, because V is the man of the people, says from an operational standpoint, so nothing on the field, but from the operation standpoint, the people running these concessions need to be aware of the season ticket member discounts and honor them. One lady tried to argue about discounted domestics not being a thing until I hit her with the print. So he's got the screenshot of what there's a food and beverage discount. That's a nice perk for season ticket members. Food and beverage discount, $8 for beer, $3 for water, $3 for pretzels, $3 for hot dogs, $3 candy, $6 soda. So it's like reasonable prices, not like stadium movie theater prices. I think that outside of that, and how difficult it was to get in and out of the stadium because it's rush hour at 5 o'clock and really at 3:30 in Nashville, I thought everything was done pretty well. But again, I did not go through like the concessions and the entry and egress issues that maybe some people were having. 615-737-1045. But from the football standpoint, somebody brought up, and we've put this to a poll question on Twitter, @BuckRising is where you can vote on the polls. The position groups that kind of caught your attention yesterday at practice, because like I said, and as you all are well aware, this is the first time that you've had the opportunity to see a lot of these guys. Now, a lot of the responses so far have just been about the special teamers, whether it's the kickers or the kicker, because of course Tucker McCann's still on the shelf, the kick returners and the punt returners and the holders. They're getting a lot of love, which is not necessarily what I thought people would have gravitated towards. But, I mean, Sam Ficken has been fine in the absence of Tucker McCann, and really throughout the course of practice so far. We do this thing at practice now every day where we keep track of the kicks that are being made. Ficken yesterday in front of, 7,000 fans, a little under 7,000 fans, handful of media, staff, whatever, and his teammates, he was good from 44, 30, 33, 31, 41, 44, 53, 33. He missed a 48-yarder. So from that standpoint, because I was surprised how many people, I do that mailbag on my podcast, on the 615 Sessions podcast every Tuesday, where people send me questions about the Titans on my Instagram DMs. And I go through them, and I was shocked by how many people were sending me kicker concerns. Like, could Tucker McCann getting rolled up on get in his head? Could it give him the yips about making field goals? And like, how much of a liability is he moving forward? Like all this crazy stuff. There was a 2-paragraph question about Tucker McCann's headspace after getting rolled up on in the preseason game in Atlanta. I'm like, I don't know. This dude was on practice squad IR last year. I don't know how the hell I'm supposed to diagnose the psychology of the kicker. It's a better question for Tucker McCann, who is not I don't know if he's uncomfortable with speaking, but he was not the best quote. It's okay. As long as he makes the field goals, what do you care if he's a good quote? But Ficken, throughout the course of his time here since they waived Blake Haubeil and they've kind of shuffled things around, I think they've been fine. Like there's nothing like the start of camp where it was egregious, where you were seeing just whiffs and knuckleballs and pulls and wide rights and all of these things that with relative consistency that made you nervous about the upcoming season, given that this is a team that in 2019 made the AFC Championship game, but kicked or hit 44.4% of their field goals. It's still an unbelievable number to me. And then drastic improvement in 2020, despite how Gostkowski struggled, but still 71% is well under average. So outside of that, I think the amount of stress field goal kicking is putting on Titans fans right now, even as we are maybe a little less than a month from the first game at Nissan Stadium. People are really shook up about this. Because for me, it was the wide receivers. Every time I walk out there, man, it's the wide receivers. AJ didn't do a ton yesterday, but he did more than Julio. Julio walking out onto the field, give the people what they want, throw a couple foam footballs in the stands, kiss some babies, shake some hands, all these things. Julio Jones. And I'd be curious. Everybody is reported to have or is going to make the trip to Tampa Bay, by the way, when the team travels. It will be curious to me, and we probably won't know this until like 3 o'clock today because this is when the league transactions come down. Will be curious to me today if guys get cut today or if guys have already been cut this morning before the team makes the trip down to Tampa Bay, just for the sake of numbers and ease. And, maybe you think that's a cold-hearted part of the business, but I do think that possibility would be out there. So potentially monitor that over the course of today. The transactions every day when the waiver wire comes out, 3 o'clock Central Time, and 4, of course, Eastern, if you are somebody who listens to us in an Eastern time zone. 615-737-1045. Deeply in love, says Cousin Andrew, with naming your listeners the pole dancers because, well, that's what pollutes your show. That's right. The poles are everywhere, baby. You can't escape them. Phrasing. But elsewhere on the field yesterday, so Josh Reynolds, his post-game media availability was the most interesting to me. Maybe because, we're still kind of getting to know Josh Reynolds. Maybe because he hasn't been available a ton to us because he's been on the shelf for some time. Now he's been working his way back into the rotation, and he's speaking of some of the stuff that's bothering him. Some of the stuff that's bothering him, like a shoulder surgery coming into this offseason that he says is almost all the way healed, meaning that it's not all the way healed. So he's dealing with that. Then yesterday, and last week he said something about this too. I think it got largely glossed over, but Josh Reynolds has been talking about this Achilles agitation, been going on with him for some time. Now, he had one of the best days from practice that I saw him have, and I thought Mike Vrabel was really good on that after the fact because he spoke to that. He said, he dropped a pass early in the practice, came back, had a really, really nice deep catch from Tannehill on a diving play. He was making contested catches out there at the end. He really found his stride. It's one of the better days that they've seen from him and that we've seen from him. We haven't seen a ton of days from him. So, are you dead set on this idea of Josh Reynolds as wide receiver 3, or are you comfortable with where your depth is right now at that position to allow Josh Reynolds or somebody who may be on the outside looking in, man? Des Fitzpatrick, again, early drops, had a couple yesterday, but early drops again in practice. The more that I think about it, and we'll have this conversation with Ben Arthur of the Tennessean and John Glennon of Broadway Sports later in the show, I think he's a real candidate to get cut. I really do. I think that there's just a problem with the numbers for that position right now, to where you can't, unless you're going to find a creative way to shelf this guy who's going to clear waivers and you can practice squad him. There's something about this situation that I feel is trending in the wrong direction for Des Fitzpatrick to make this roster. He has time to, make strides in that area. There is quite a bit of time left, not a ton of time, but enough time for him to make strides, at the position to really make a push for those bottom of the roster wide receiver spots. But right now, he's not top 4. He's probably not top 5. And then you got to have a conversation about, there's plenty of guys who've been productive and consistent, more consistent for this team. Mason Kinsey is somebody who has been productive in his preseason games and consistent. I think he's in the wrong camp. I still think he ends up on the outside looking in, but still. Des Fitzpatrick, we talked about this yesterday, coming off of Mike Vrabel's comments over the weekend. He's in a very tenuous position so early on in his career. And with Josh Reynolds, somebody who may take some time to be completely right and may never be completely right, which is unfortunate because he's on a 1-year deal. I don't necessarily think that makes him a lock to make the roster either if things trend poorly for him. But right now, you should consider him in the mix. The numbers are in a bad way for Des Fitzpatrick trying to make this roster at the wide receiver position. Unless something drastic happens, I think he's got a lot, in Mike Vrabel's own words, a lot of work to do. 615-737-1045. Vince is in Franklin. He wants to talk about Josh Reynolds. What's up, Vince?
How's it going, Mr. Reising? Hope everything is well.
Everything is fantastic, my brother.
All right. I heard you was heading out to Tampa. Safe travel to you.
I appreciate that. Yeah, the flight right after the show today. We're gonna have to hit it quick. I don't know how long it's gonna take me to get to BNA, but we're gonna be touch and go today.
You and your travel times, but you're gonna have to work on that. You kind of sound like Ron Slay with this last minute.
Yeah, well, Slay's got a different kind of procrastination in him. Slay takes naps in the middle of my show in the middle of the day, so that's the Ron Slay time clock. What you got for me, Vince?
Okay, so with this Josh Reynolds guy being hurt, and then you got Julio barely playing, they trying to manage him, and then you got this Darrington Evans, and he's always. Are we seeing a theme of injury prone here? And Darrington Evans can't stay healthy, and then you like you just said, this Josh Reynolds may never be right, and that's a mental thing that'll kick in too. So,
sure,
is that something that as fans we should be looking out for? Because just in case your one goes down, you always got to have a 2 and 3 because you always have that next man mentality. So, is that something that we should start to be looking at with these guys being injured all the time?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, Vince. 615-737-1045. You got to take it case by case, right? And I'll explain what I mean by that on the other side, and then we're going to talk about Tim Tebow. Because I do think Vince is bringing up a concern that maybe not every Titans fan is voicing right now, but enough of it is starting to pop up with those particular players that he named, Julio Jones, Darrington Evans, and Josh Reynolds. 3 different cases, and we'll talk about them on the other side and also what's happening with Tim Tebow. That's coming up next. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
The Titans play 4 preseason quarters against Tom Brady's Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And your flagship for Titans radio has the game.
Comeback foiled.
Saturday night at 6:30 on your home for Titans football. 104.5 The Zone.
Music City Autoplex announces their best price guarantee. They'll beat any competitor's price on a comparable vehicle, or they'll pay you $1,000. You heard right. They'll beat any competitor's price on a comparable vehicle or pay you $1,000. Music City Autoplex is committed to bringing Middle Tennessee the best selection at the best prices guaranteed. And they stand by that commitment. This is just one of the reasons they're the uncommon dealership. Start your search today at MusicCityAutoplex.com or swing by 2430 Gallatin Pike North.
Are you in the market for a garage, storage shed, or pole barn? Enter Affordable Building Concepts. These guys have been serving the Nashville area for 20 years and have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. They are licensed, bonded, and insured, so rest easy. Need a carport, new fence, deck, or a patio cover? Call them for your free on-site consultation, 615-594-5587, or visit affordable-buildings.com, 615-594-5587. Affordable Building Concepts, your backyard builders.
Well, I'm 67 years old. I lost 71 pounds. I was a size 46 pants 2 years ago, and I've been taking it, and I'm a size 36 pants now.
Congratulations, Pat, on losing 71 pounds and 10 inches off your waistline. Now listen to Brian's results.
My sleeping is better. My joint pains are much better, and the weight loss is coming along. I'm about 13 to 14 pounds lighter. It has reduced my sugar cravings big time. Sugar cravings and reduced joint pains, and those two are big time.
Outstanding results, Brian. Guys, since 2004, men have chosen Andro 400 for one reason.
receiver. And then Darrington Evans, who I think a lot of people were excited about. I know I was particularly excited to see, and it may still be a thing. It's, what did Vrabel call him? Day-to-day. It's as close to a timeline as Mike's ever given us. It's like manna from heaven, just simply a day-to-day. But with each of those individual situations, like injury prone is not the word. Well, I guess here's how we'll do it. Okay, let's start with Julio. Julio Jones. How many times have I said it? Lucas probably has a clicker back there. In fact, I should find a creative way to say it another way or be fined, but he doesn't practice. Like in the last 2 years with the Atlanta Falcons, he doesn't practice. Now, last year was different. For the amount of games that he missed with a season-ending injury, you can be a little more, you can be a little more anxious if you want to live that way. You can be a little more anxious about Julio coming off of a season-ending injury last year and already basically being on the shelf. But also, in the last 2 years of Julio Jones, he does not practice really. He just does the things that he needs to do to get his body ready for Sunday. At some point, and we won't have any idea what it looks like until he's out there on the field, right? In a game. Training camp practice is not how I'm judging where Julio Jones is in his abilities right now. Yes, it's the only thing that we have to work off of, and he's not going to play in the preseason. And, he's going to make the trip to Tampa, so I guess there's the possibility that he could do some work on Wednesday or Thursday. I think it's unlikely. Those things are pretty rough. I asked Taylor Lewan, and he made a stand-up routine out of it when he was at the podium. What was that, Sunday? About what he was most looking forward to in these joint training camp practices, and he laughed it off. He's like, looking forward to? What do you mean? You're going to go to the beach? It's going to be a bloodbath. Said the word bloodbath. This is how those guys. I've heard Ramon Foster talk about it on J. Martin Ramon that comes on before this show. Somebody in these joint practices, one team has to bend the knee. The last time the Bucs and the Titans had joint practices, it was Taylor Lewan who bent the knee to JPP. Maybe not willingly, but as in his own words, he got put in a spin cycle. That one rep went viral for all time. And it's something that Lewan and both Jason Pierre-Paul still remember. That's going to be a part of the storyline this week. It is going to be a hugely competitive 2 days because Tom Brady didn't take it easy on them last time when he was here before the 2019 season, his final year with the Patriots. So Julio Jones doesn't practice. Then you look at Josh Reynolds. The Reynolds thing is more concerning, right? He comes in with a shoulder. He's dealing with an Achilles. His efforts have been admirable, understanding all that, but at some point, you need your wide receiver 3 to do more than just kind of be a professional about his rehabilitation process. No, you need this dude to play. So out of all of them, that you're most concerned about because his trajectory here, right now, it's only a year. You need him to be able to contribute for the year that he's on this roster, right? You've pushed your chips all in. That's what the Julio Jones trade is. That's what the Bud Dupree signing is. Josh Reynolds is an additional, should have been and could be, benefit to your offense that's already pretty stacked. Darrington Evans is a different category. Darrington Evans is disappointing. You're not worried about Julio. I'm not worried about Julio. You're probably most concerned about Josh Reynolds, and you're disappointed by Darrington Evans. Through no fault of his own, it seems. Hamstrings, keeping him out his first year, a good bit of his first year. This was told to us and reported in the press box in Atlanta as questionable to return with a knee. Now, he did not return, nor did he return to practice the last couple of days. So the optics on that one are the worst. And if you are a Titans fan looking at this guy as a third-round draft pick, you're like, I could live without another Taywan Taylor. Taywan's issues were different, but you know what I mean. A disappointing third-round pick. Because Taywan Taylor never lived up to the status of a third-round pick. I think he's still in the league, which is honestly impressive because I didn't think that was going to be the case. But you don't want Darrington Evans to have a similar disappointing trajectory, whether it be by injury or in the case of Tebow, the fact that he just never could seem to catch up with what was going on and that consistency catching the football was a problem. So I think each of those three things you got to look at individually. Tyreka says new coach, new team, new state, new OC. He needs to practice. We struggle this year. It's the coach's fault. That's from Tyreka. Ah, yes, Titans Facebook is here in force. We love to see it. So he's talking about Julio in that situation. I mean, listen, is it important? Is it a big part of the story if Julio doesn't impress right out of the gate? Because he's working with a new quarterback for the first time in a decade? Yes. But it's not something that's going to change based on at least his agreement with the coaching staff and how he's going to manage himself. He has input. This is a part of his own plan. It's as much about what he wants to do as it is about what the coaches want to do. We'll come back the second hour. We will have a Titans media roundtable, and I want to talk about some energy based off this Julio conversation, some vibes that were coming out of the stadium yesterday with just about 7,000 in the stands. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Jay Mart and Ramon are not afraid to put themselves out there with a bold prediction.
I've been fighting saying this out loud.
Who would, Jay?
I'm picking the Titans to win the Super Bowl.
Tomorrow, starting at 6 on 104.5 The Zone.
Tuesday. Hope that many of you got the opportunity to attend yesterday's stadium practice at Nissan. It was really, really cool to see about 7,000 fans in attendance. Cool to see some of the people who listen to this show hang out, and feel kind of normal. It's the first time I've been on that field since 2019, like physically on the field. But, these are things that only affect me. We're happy to have you in for the next 2 hours. We've got a great show ahead for you, still yet to go. John Glennon and Ben Arthur of Broadway Sports and the Tennessean, respectively. We're going to have a little bit of a Titans media roundtable to talk about the week that's been so far before everybody takes off for Tampa Bay. We're also going to be joined by linebacker David Long in the noon hour, so make sure you don't miss a minute, and some great stuff from Greg Cosell of NFL Films on the evolution of Tom Brady, which is obviously going to be a big point of discussion with these joint practices against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Don't forget that Bruce Arians has already said that none of the starters, to no one's surprise, will play in Saturday's preseason game. That's what the joint practices are for. If you want to get involved, the number is very easy. It's 615-737-1045, 615-737-1045. Or you can interact with the show on Zone TV if you so choose. Facebook Live, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. We would be happy to take your commentary throughout the course of the day. Did you enjoy the stadium practice? Certainly, it seemed like they did a really good job kind of setting up the event in a better way than they did a couple of years ago, right? The 2019 one, if I recall correctly, got rained out, so it really never took place. I mean, the 2018 conditional or situational football practice lives in infamy until the end of time. It goes down in my book as Mike Vrabel's first massive screw-up as head coach of the Tennessee Titans, just because of a lack of, ironically enough, situational awareness with the way that went down. Having the fans in the stands for the first time as the head coach, and then, going through fake field goals and punt passes and all manner of individual situations that the average football fan doesn't want to see. Now, what was really cool about yesterday, for a great many reasons, was the energy in the stadium. And this has been a kind of a theme throughout the course of the offseason. Obviously, we haven't had, as a media corps, you guys haven't been able to attend Titans practice up to this point because of the way that the facility's been under construction. But I really took away from that practice what I think that environment is going to set up to be in 2021. There's so many reasons to be excited about the season if you're a fan. Hell, there's plenty of reasons for me to be excited as a media member, just to have fans back in the stands. There is a certain kind of atmosphere, and I don't got to tell you guys this, there's a certain kind of atmosphere that comes along with live sporting events, especially with a team that's built to win now. 7,000 fans in the stand. Not a ton by any stretch of the imagination. About 1/10 of the capacity at Nissan Stadium. But just simply seeing the reaction from those of you who did attend with something as simple as a Josh Reynolds reception on a Ryan Tannehill bomb, right? We talked to Josh Reynolds at great length yesterday after the practice, and he kind of disclosed to us what's been going on with his Achilles, as we touched on in the first hour, and how that situation is kind of unfolding for him. It's unfortunate, but juice from big plays, right? You see it had to have been 50-plus yards, the bomb that Tannehill threw to Josh Reynolds that he was able to make a diving catch on. That got the crowd going. And then, I'm standing on the sidelines with all of my Titans media colleagues and fellow Vultures, and there starts to become this roar from the crowd when nothing's necessarily going on at that point in practice. So I'm looking around. I'm trying to figure out exactly what it is that's got everybody a buzz. And then I just simply look to my left and, very unassuming, by himself, walking out, sweatpants and his number 2 jersey. But Julio Jones, for the first time, many of you guys in person were able to lay eyes on your prized offseason acquisition, not free agent, of course, because he came here via trade, but just the aura that dude carried with him, with A.J. Brown out on the field and fans responding to Derrick Henry and reacting to Derrick Henry and people calling out dad from the crowd with Taylor Lewan and his new visor and all of these things. Bud Dupree, Harold Landry, like there was a reception for a Titans team that, and an energy around this Titans team that I haven't felt in some time. It's not the first time that we've brought this up, but something certainly that I think will carry over into the stadium atmosphere. I mean, you've read the reports from the Tennesseans, something that we really haven't touched on a lot. Maybe a lack of foresight by us as a show, but this idea that ticket sales for this team are through the roof. Now, there's probably a great many reasons because of that with this Titans ticket surge that has resulted from a variety of factors, right? People have been cooped up. Not everybody's been able to go to a sporting event or a concert or, been able to do things like normal throughout the course of the last 18, 19 months almost. So you want to get out. You want to have communal experiences. You want to do that at things that are fun, right? You want to be at the thing that everybody else is going to, that everybody else is talking about. Right now, for the first time in my 6 years, that's a Titans game. There's probably some effect of Julio Jones. There's probably some carryover from last year in a way that you had the most prolific offense in this franchise's history, at least in the Titans era history. And how excited many of you are to see how that product carries over, how excited you are to see, a multi-touchdown game by Ryan Tannehill or Derrick Henry going crazy for 150, 200 plus yards in a single game as he does. The opportunity, and something that I think that we really didn't touch on yesterday in a way that I wanted to. I was watching the NFL Top 100, and I promise this all links with one another. 615-737-1045 if you'd like to jump in on the conversation. 615-737-1045. The Top 100 in the NFL, it's happening right now. We started getting tweets about it, right? Why the hell is Ryan Tannehill ranked number 83? The disrespect. He's down from I can't remember if it was 67 or 65, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. But people start tweeting at Titans Media. They start tweeting at the NFL and the NFL Network about what a disgrace this is and how could the players get this wrong, and on and on and on it goes. And I sat there fighting this in my mentions for quite some time because I hate lists. I feel like as an audience, we have collectively, as a show, because of course this is your show. Lucas and I are just the people facilitating this. As a show and as an audience, I feel like we've kind of conditioned ourselves to be anti-list, and that makes me very happy. But with this NFL Top 100, I'm watching it. I'm seeing the reaction to it from players and people congratulating one another, whether they be teammates or fans, celebrating the fact that these players are just appearing on the list. And I came away with two things. And this all flows in to this energy and this aura about this particular year's team. 3 players so far in the top 100. You got Ryan Tannehill, Jeffrey Simmons, and A.J. Brown in that order, ascending order. I felt like, regardless of where they're placed, there is something to the idea of just having these guys be a part of one of these lists that I really think generates an excitement, generates the opportunity for, a younger fan, maybe generationally, Titans fans who have been around for a while, who used to go to games with their parents. Maybe you got away from it in the last couple of years because the team hadn't been great. Then you started to shift your attention more towards them once they became, at this point, impossible to ignore in the Nashville sports landscape. Just for those kind of generational fans that may have skipped a gap, right? From the 99 year, the Super Bowl run, and those teams that resulted afterwards, where you went from winning division titles and being in the playoffs on a consistent basis to like a decade-long drought, basically, of competency for this franchise. So it almost skipped a generation in terms of that fan base that you're trying to create, that core, your base constituency, to use a political term, that is going to continue to show up and support you throughout good times and bads. It's a lot different in sports, right? It's much harder to support a loser. Nobody is going to blame you if you don't want to go out there and 97-degree heat in September where there's very little protection from the elements in that stadium, and go out and watch Jake Locker kind of fart around on a football field. Nobody was blaming people for that. Maybe there was some kind of outcry about why people don't attend Titans games, and it's really been a consistent theme since I've been here about, let's take a picture of the stadium while the national anthem is being sung. Let's see what capacity looks like from the press box prior to kickoff, and I get so tired of that theme because I don't blame people for the way that kind of support drifted away. But with things like the NFL Top 100 and the excitement that's being generated around this team, one, you're finding guys that are marketable with this franchise. Ryan Tannehill, A.J. Brown, Jeffrey Simmons. I'm sure Derrick Henry will make an appearance on that list. Who can say how many more Titans will be on that list? And if they're not on the offensive side of the football, by the way, a travesty in any stretch of the imagination that none of the offensive line who helped Derrick Henry rush for a 2,000-yard season will be on the top 100, but I digress. That marketability, that ability for a younger fan, maybe the generation that was skipped over in terms of Titans fandom because of that decade-long lull, maybe they've had kids now. Maybe they've been to the Nissan Stadium practice. Maybe they've felt that kind of energy and gotten excited about Derrick Henry and A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. And now you see Jeffrey Simmons on NFL Network as a part of the top 100, and you say, that's my guy. I've got his jersey hanging in my closet. I'm going to go to school the next day and tell all of my friends that I got a football thrown to me at the Nissan Stadium practice by Titans defensive lineman Jeffrey Simmons. That stuff, while I may trivialize it, and I think maybe too often do I trivialize it because I kind of trend cynical, and that's not the best thing to be. I think it helps me in terms of how I do my job, but ultimately it kind of creates this disconnect between me and the actual sports fans, you guys who are experiencing this differently than I am. Whereas this is work for me, and it's a hell of a lot of fun. It's still work for me. I look at this differently. Whereas you guys, this is how you choose to spend your disposable income. This is how you choose to invest your time. This is how you elect to let your emotions get caught up in a season and storylines and players and coaches and individuals and ultimately success in the last couple of years. It's just one stadium practice. And I don't think that I'm being overly, and maybe I'm being a little overly romantic about it, but I think that it's okay to romanticize right now. It's okay to, if you're a Titans fan looking at this, say, I'm legitimately invested in the success of this team. I want my friends, my family members to come with me and be invested in the success of this team. The same for the Preds during the Stanley Cup run. The last time Tennessee was good, whether it's, Tennessee basketball in March Madness a couple of years ago before they got unceremoniously bounced by Purdue. Like there are moments, momentum with sports teams that whether they come around, cyclically, not often enough, but the ones that matter, the ones that hit hard, the ones that you go into work, the office, the Monday after a Sunday at Nissan Stadium, and you say, or a Thursday night football game at Nissan Stadium, for example, and you say, I saw Derrick Henry rush for the most yards in a single game in the history of this franchise against the Jacksonville Jaguars. 4 touchdowns. I was there to see it. I was there to see the starting moments of somebody who has Hall of Fame caliber potential, who is currently in the process of building a Hall of Fame resume. I heard Nate Burleson on Good Morning Football talking about, if Derrick Henry gets anywhere close to 2,000 yards again in his career, you can't write the history of the NFL without Derrick Henry. And so all of this to say that at this moment in time, you have a team that has that historic potential, a team that only comes around for any franchise once every, decade plus, in the case of some of the more forlorn franchises in the NFL. Looking at you, Bengals fans, for all your not postseason success. You get to the postseason, then you lose. You're a Cleveland Browns fan, and you've suffered for 25, 30 some odd years since the team, left for Baltimore and then came back and restarted the Browns franchise, and now you're just starting to get good. It's cyclical. You've suffered for long enough that when the good times come, you're prepared for them. That's ultimately what I'm looking at this team, or looking through my worldview, through my prism at this team. Because the energy that I'm feeling around it, the energy that you guys are displaying, the investment that you guys have carried all offseason long throughout the course of last season, for as up and down as it might have been, for all the flaws that team had, now you look at that as expectations. And expectations, that was the kind of kinetic energy that I was feeling in Nissan Stadium on Monday night with nearly 7,000 of you in attendance. Kinetic energy and expectations for a team that is supposed to regularly have success. It's a cool feeling. We'll come back and we'll have a Titans Media Roundtable. John Glennon and Ben Arthur of Broadway Sports and the Tennessean, respectively, two of my fellow Titans media compatriots. They're going to join us, and we're going to get into a more training camp position battle-centric conversation. Stick around. It's going to be a good one. This is 104.5 The Zone.
The Titans are in Tampa against the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yeah, it's the preseason, but hey, it's Tom Brady. Mike Keith and Coach Mack have the kickoff Saturday night at 6:30.
Throws a man down and goes out of bounds at the 40.
On your home for Titans football and flagship for Titans radio, 104.5 The Zone.
conversation. We really dug deep into everything that we saw in the preseason game, the position groups to watch, and basically whether Des Fitzpatrick is in danger of being cut by this final hour on this Tuesday. A Titans Media Roundtable is what we're going to do in this segment. John Glennon of Broadway Sports and new Titans beat writer for the Tennessean, Ben Arthur, is going to be a part of this conversation. We really dug deep into everything that we saw in the preseason game, the position groups to watch, and basically whether Des Fitzpatrick is in danger of being cut by this team this year. This was from my 615 Sessions podcast that you can find on the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed. You're really going to enjoy it. Back here, 615 Sessions podcast. We got a first-timer and an old-timer. We got Ben Arthur of the Tennessean and Johnny Glennon with fresh hair, fresh nails, the whole 9 yards, live from his living room. Boys, how we doing?
Doing well, great, Buck. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So we're already off sync. We're going to have to learn how to communicate throughout the course of this podcast because I didn't tell Ben that Glennon was coming and I didn't tell Johnny that Ben was going to be here because, we like to play Russian roulette with our media compatriots to stop by the podcast. So Johnny, I'm sorry I sprung this on you. I hope you're okay.
Oh, it's good. A little surprise keeps us on our toes and, we can work some good chemistry this way.
Ben, I promise you, Johnny's not as bad as this as you would think he would be.
Okay, I'll take your word on that.
So, Glennon, at what point did you decide that you were going to bail on the Atlanta trip? Because you lied to me, John. You told me you were going, and then you just didn't show up. What happened?
Yeah. As Thursday began to roll into Friday, I think two things. Logic and perhaps laziness came into my thinking.
Good.
As much as it's a nice short journey up and back, you like to keep up with the team in person. I thought, again, this is week 1 of the preseason. We're not going to see a starter. Actually, we did see a few, but, nothing real significant. And, I just felt very comfortable on that couch. So I said, a young guy like Ben, full of energy, full of vigor, that's the kind of guy you want to see heading down to Atlanta. And sure enough, young Ben was on the move, I believe. Yes? Yes, I was. I spent 2 nights there. Ooh. Actually, it was, yeah. Yeah, that's kind of crazy for week 1 of the preseason, right? Just doing 2 nights, but just stay with family, stay with my cousin and, got to see my little niece who's 1 year old. So, made a little family trip out of it, but it was nice to see some football played and hey, Rashad Weaver, made some noise. We saw some other guys, especially on that defensive front kind of show out. So, looking forward to talking about all that, but it was a fun trip, John. I think you missed out. Me, Buck, Jim, TD, we had a good time without you. So, it was. It's not hard.
Ben just said, Johnny, how you feel about that?
Hey, hold on. We must be on a podcast here. Holy cow. That's okay. Yes, I forgot, Ben, that you had family in that neck of the woods. So I'm glad you made it all about family and football. It's a special journey then. Very nice.
This podcast has already become far too serious. I've just seen Glennon clutch his pearls, and Ben's telling me about his niece. So now I have to take a softer approach than I otherwise would. No, there was football played. It was enjoyable to an extent. Once we got through, or at least the offensive line deficiencies on both sides of the football, it was impossible for either offense to move the ball for a good deal of that preseason game outside of penalties, but they did seem to find their groove as things wore on. And as in Mike Vrabel's own words, Dean Pease quit blitzing quarterbacks. That was an important note to have. But I guess, Johnny, when you watch that game, I don't know if you've watched it back or how many times you've watched it back, but what kind of, outside of Weaver, because he's the obvious, and we'll get to him, what kind of popped for you?
I think we saw the defensive line, really the starters, at least 2 of the starters on the defensive line. Granted, they didn't play for long, but they were in there, and I thought they were a very disruptive group. And I think overall on defense, and again, I'll preface this by saying, we don't know how much we can take from this because it's basically second teamers versus second teamers, thirds versus thirds, etc. But overall, I thought it was an aggressive group on defense. I thought it was similar to what we have seen in practice when we go out there on most days, and perhaps surprisingly, this defense has been better than the offense on most days out there. And I thought that was kind of reflected out there too. There was constant pressure, on the Atlanta quarterback spot. And I like that. And they got one turnover, looked very close to getting a second turnover as well. So again, these are baby signs for the defense, but things like pressuring the quarterback, getting off the field on third down. We can't say things are cured because these are not starters. So, how much do we know? But hey, you'd rather have it than not. And that's probably the, kind of the primary takeaway I had there.
Ben didn't suffer this team on third down the way that we have, John. So I don't know necessarily, Ben, what your expectations were going into this thing. But I had Mike Keith, who's the voice of the Titans on the radio show today, and he said that five sack calls in a game is as much as he's done in a very long time. So I'm certain he was happy to see that as well. What were your impressions?
Yeah, just kind of building off of what John said. I mean, that defensive front, looked great. Like the backups, the reserves. I mean, even in practice, right, that they've been going up against a lot of the reserves or the rookies, the unproven guys, just because so many guys have been in and out. Lawan hasn't been 100% yet. Ben Jones has missed several practices. Kendall Lamb has been out. Nate Davis has missed a few practices. So, they've been looking good in practices, but it's been largely against reserves. And for them to do it, in a game, albeit, against a lot of reserves on the other side, I think that was very encouraging. But, I was also impressed by some of the guys, in the secondary. Christian Fulton, had, a nice pass break up there in the game. I think he's a guy who's really stepped up. I think, the point, like, I think the first couple days of training camp were a little bit slower for him, but I remember that first day that Caleb Farley was activated off the non-football injury list, he had a pick and then he had a near pick six. The first day Caleb was eligible to practice. So I thought that was very interesting, but I think Christian Fulton has looked good. And at this point, I think he's your week one starter with Jackrabbit, just because Caleb hasn't been doing, all that much. Breon Borders, another guy who's could continue to make plays, had what I thought was a pick, but refs thought the ball, hit the ground in the game. And then just on the offensive side of the ball, I kind of liked what Logan Woodside was showing. I think, early on, especially in the first preseason game, you're playing behind a lot of reserves, a lot of backup old linemen. There were a lot of struggles and the blitzing they struggled with. But, at no point did he ever really lose his composure. He looked, like he was in command of the offense. He kind of settled down, was able to make some nice throws to Cam Batson and, Mason Kinsey. And as Mike Vrabel said, he thought he handled the blitzing relatively well. So Woodside was definitely, a standout for me. Kinsey, as I mentioned, I thought played well too. So I think there are a lot of, encouraging signs on, both sides of the ball.
Oh, well, I mean, and Woodside may have kept his composure, but Cam Batson certainly deserves more praise for keeping his composure after Woodside almost got him killed on a ball that was very well behind him. That seemed destined for a concussion. But the back shoulder throw to Batson in the end zone was nice. For as good as the defense seemed to look, because you're right, and I think let's stick with that before we talk about the bad, because the bad was primarily on offense, and that's not something I thought we would come away talking about today. But with the secondary, Johnny, how do you get Fulton on the field when Farley's out there? Like, I know we don't know when Farley's going to be out there, and it was weird the way that they had Elijah Molden's pads at the game, and like they were taking pictures of it on social media. And then Vrabel tells us afterwards that he didn't travel, so we have no idea what's going on there. I mean, how do you, given that the top four corners are guys that are going to be here this year, and kind of that toss up between the fifth one with Chris Jackson seeing a lot of snaps in the nickel and Breon Borders again playing well. What do you kind of do with that situation in the secondary whenever Caleb Farley is available?
Yeah, it's an interesting puzzle there. You're right, because I agree with Ben too. I don't think Caleb Farley is going to be ready, to be your starter week one. But at some point, presumably with his talent, with his skill, and the fact that he was the first round draft pick, he's going to be in that starting lineup. But Christian Fulton obviously is hardly a throwaway guy. You say, okay, Farley's in there. Let's bury Fulton on the bench. He's a second round pick last year, and a lot of it is expected of him too. So do you go back, and Christian Fulton certainly started last year out in the slot, and the nickel, had mixed results because that's not really his background. He was not much of a slot guy in college, and he was kind of forced to learn that. So do you go back and do that again and arguably get your three best guys out there in Farley, Jack Rabbit, and Christian Fulton? Or, you've got two guys who are sort of nickel specialists. Elijah Molden is about as, lined up and perfect a slot specialist as you're going to find. And Chris Jackson, from all we can see at camp, has improved quite a bit as a slot guy too. So in that case, does Christian Fulton become your fourth cornerback really? Now, granted, you're probably going to use, four corners from time to time, certainly in today's game. But, I think the Titans are going to have to figure out what they want there. If they want to try and press Fulton into a role where he is not immediately comfortable just to get the top three cornerbacks out there, or do you say, we want Farley and Jack Rabbit, our two best guys eventually, and a slot specialist. And if that's the case, well, all of a sudden it's kind of weird that Christian Fulton is your number 4 guy and he's a second round draft pick.
They did this last year too. They created redundancies for themselves at corner, and that was out of necessity because they had some injuries with Adoree Jackson not playing, and then the Jonathan Joseph debacle. But they traded for Desmond King as a slot corner, and that while Fulton was hurt, and then they bumped Fulton to the outside. It looked a lot better, certainly, but they spent all of the first basically 3 or 4 games of last season with Fulton in the slot and teaching him a more complicated position, frankly, than the one he's being asked to play right now. So it's a complicated dynamic. But so as Ben pointed out, Fulton has looked strong. Now, he did leave practice. As we're taping this on a Monday, the people will hear it on a Tuesday. He did leave Sunday's practice, a little nicked up at the end of it. We are not sure the severity. Mike Vrabel gave us a timeline on Darrington Evans the other day, day to day. So maybe we'll get another one when we speak to him at the stadium practice that we're all getting ready to attend here in just a little while. On the offensive side of the ball, go ahead, Johnny.
Sorry, Buck. I was just going to make one more point on the corner situation there. It's possible too that the Titans are looking at more obviously than just this 1 year. How many years is Jack Rabbit going to be around? It's not a long-term deal necessarily that he's going to be here. So maybe you're looking eventually at Farley, Fulton on the outsides, and maybe Molden there in the slot. So maybe this year there's a little bit of a glut, albeit a very young glut. Maybe that starts to thin out, in years to come. But anyway, go ahead.
But anyway, the offense. The offense was not good. The offense, Logan Woodside was fine. Matt Barkley is 9 years in the league, and he's beaten up on 3s and 4s, much to the chagrin of my buddy Luke Worsham, who says that he's the superior quarterback, which is just pure and total idiocy, and I love Luke to death. The offensive line. I mean, if any of these guys go down up front, like we have all lived the Daniel Munyer experience quite a bit at this point, not just in that preseason game, but in all the botch snaps at practices. I mean, I don't know what's going on with Aaron Brewer. I don't know. I haven't seen any reporting on it from anybody really among us about what he's doing on the PUP. And what must have been an offseason situation because he didn't end the year with any kind of injuries that we were aware of. But that's their best option as a backup offensive lineman outside of Dylan Radins, who I don't know necessarily that they think is any kind of ready. I mean, what do you make of the backup offensive line, Ben, in the action that we saw?
Yeah, there's some work to be done there. Munyer, as you mentioned, has just not been getting it done. Radins to his credit, I think he has, kind of improved a little bit as training camp wore on. We all saw those first few days of padded practices, man. Dude was struggling. Yeah. Like he's really, really struggling. But I think, last couple of practices and into the preseason game, he did show some promise. And I saw a stat from, Pro Football Focus. He had, more than 10, pass blocking snaps, and he didn't allow, a pressure. That's at least according to PFF. So, he has made strides. Vrabel used the word encouraging to describe, the progress that he's made. But yeah, all in all, there hasn't been, a whole lot, to like there. Even Banwart, he's basically been the third guy at center. He hasn't always looked great either.
For context for the audience, he's the undrafted rookie free agent out of Iowa that's been playing a little bit along the offensive line, who you saw in basically second half on Friday night.
Exactly. Yeah. Thanks, Buck. And and Ross Reynolds started at left guard. Hadn't been. Yeah, he wasn't a guy who stood out to me at all in practices, and then I see him starting. So that was, quite interesting.
Let me tell you a quick story about Ross Reynolds at this game, okay? Because we are obviously, us media vermin, we're not permitted on the field in a lot of these stadiums. I'm sure is going to be the case as the Delta variant creeps closer and closer upon us. But we're in the lower bowl pregame. Tehran, Jimmy, and myself, and we're standing right by the tunnel where the players are coming out. Now, it just so happens that apparently it was friends and family night at the first preseason game. You saw people like Mason Kinsey have good interactions. I saw David Long with his family, drove down from Cincinnati, some family from Atlanta, all good stuff. But we're standing by the tunnel, and this woman gets up and says, "Hey, you guys are kind of blocking my view. We're here to see our son." And Tehran goes, "Oh, who's your son?" And she goes, "Ross Reynolds." And I said, "Josh Reynolds?" She goes, no, Ross Reynolds. And Tehran and I both look at each other like, who?
Oh, dear.
Starting left guard for the Tennessee Titans on Friday night. So
you can't say that to Mom. You can't say that to Mrs. Reynolds now.
I did not say it to her face, Johnny, but certainly I think she heard us giggling about it as she was walking away from telling us to get the hell out of her view. Proceed, Ben.
Yeah, no, I was basically done. I'll kind of let John, go ahead from here. But yeah, that depth just isn't looking great. And then when you have so many starters kind of in and out of practice, you kind of wonder, how it's all going to come together, week one. So yeah, that's kind of an area of concern, I think, as we kind of, get deeper into the preseason. What are your thoughts, John?
Yeah, well, I think one thing to remember too, and you guys have touched on this also, but a lot of those problems are coming at center, and we know
coming up,
Daniel Munyer is not the answer at center, but a lot of those blitzes, we're coming through those A gaps up front, and then there was delayed safety blitz that came right through center too. So you would think, if there's a higher ranked center, and that's why they brought in a guy like a Spencer Pulley. The former Vanderbilt guy, and he's since got hurt. You would think someone like him would have had that experience maybe to keep a little bit of those blitzers away. And Aaron Brewer, again, we haven't seen him yet because of the injury, but, I know they saw from him at a guard last year, and I think, may have been able to do better at center as well. To me, it's kind of interesting what they have been doing with Dylan Radins, moving him around. From guard to tackle and so forth. I get it. I get what they're doing. They want versatility. They want him to be able to plug into different spots because, let's face it, the more versatile a guy is, the less number of guys you have to keep on that 53-man roster.
Coming up next, John Glennon, Ben Arthur, and I will continue the conversation about the Titans depth chart and roster spots to watch here on 104.5 The Zone.
Install with Greg Cosell gives you an inside look into the film life of senior producer for NFL Films and NFL Matchup, Greg Cosell. The Install with Greg Cosell, joined by Buck Reising, every Wednesday afternoon at 6. Download now at Apple Podcast, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcast.
1 Hour Mick, how do you hire heating and cooling technicians?
Gotta look careful, Ryan.
Is it hard?
Finding new team members is the most important part of my job.
How hard could it be?
It's more about finding the right personality.
Huh?
We can teach you to fix air conditioners. That's the easy part.
But I thought...
To succeed at 1 Hour
station. But yes, backup quarterback, Logan Woodside's job to lose, Ben, or no?
Yes, it's absolutely his job to lose. I mean, he's still, in my eyes, by far the front runner. As I kind of mentioned earlier, he did show some, good stuff. Some of those blitzes, some of those, hits, kind of were on him, like not failure to recognize what was happening. And he did acknowledge that in the post-game press conference. But, as I also said, he did seem to settle down. He seemed to be in control of that offense. And man, he's just a guy you have to respect, like just the resiliency. It seems like the Titans are always trying to get him out of there just with all the guys they bring in as competition. It was Cole McDonald, the 7th rounder last year. Then, he beat him out. Then it was Trevor Siemian. He beat him out too. Then it was Deshaun Kaiser earlier in training camp. He beat him out. And now they have, Matt Barkley. And I think to his credit, I think Barkley did decent considering he's only been with the team like a week, and they did run the ball primarily in, when he was in the game in the second half. And I guess he was okay. I mean, there were some bad throws in there. I don't know. I didn't see what Luke saw in terms of, Matt Barkley being way ahead of Woodside. I mean, I'm not going to go there, but yeah, I think this is Woodside's job to lose at this point.
Luke picks one thing every year that he's just going to harp into the ground, which makes absolutely zero sense. Like what of anything about Matt Barkley's career makes you think that he's better than Logan Woodside or any of the other schlubs that they've run through here the past couple of years? What do you think, John?
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head right there. The one thing that Barkley obviously has that Logan Woodside does not have is the NFL experience. He's played in the league for 6 seasons, I think. He probably started 12, 15 games, something along those lines, although I think only one since 2018. But we've seen guys like this before. Just because you've played in NFL games doesn't mean you're a good NFL quarterback. His record as a starter, there's leeway there, whether that's a quarterback stat or not, but is certainly not a good record. He's thrown 11 TDs and 22 interceptions in his career. So are we looking at the next coming of a Blaine Gabbert or a younger Matt Castle, something like that? Just because you've got NFL experience doesn't mean that you're better than a guy who hasn't played a game. And that, to me, at some point, the Titans do have to take a leap of faith with Logan Woodside, and they can say, okay, Logan Woodside, you've controlled everything that you can control. You've been good every time we put you out in the preseason. You've been very good in practices. You've been award-winning off-season, in our camps here. So we just don't know until you get in the game how you're going to be. But at some point, I think the Titans have to take that leap of faith here, and they have before, obviously with Logan Woodside, and say you're our guy because you've been in this system for 2 years. You've got that edge on Barkley, and again, I think it's going to be really tough for Matt Barkley in a matter of weeks coming into a new team, going up against a guy who has been here for a couple years in this system. I think it's going to be a challenge for Matt Barkley to win that. And I think Barkley is probably the best of the challengers at that number 2 spot. But in the end, unless Logan Woodside completely falls apart in either of these last 2 preseason games, I think he's going to be the guy.
I won't do Matt Castle 2.0, Johnny. I won't live that life again. That was such a terrible experience every time he went into the game, the couple of years that he was here. And bless him, he's a lovely man, but dear God, was he tough to watch play.
Yeah, and then Blaine Gabbert, same sort of thing. Great guy. We love Blaine. And
love Blaine. Blaine on the radio show next week in Tampa. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
And I'm going to tell him how awful he was to watch in that Week 17 game when he just knuckleballed a pick to the linebacker.
I still remember. Yeah, I remember after that game, and you really felt for Blaine Gabbert because you knew this was such a great opportunity for Blaine Gabbert. There was a big game. There was a lot on the line. The team said, you're our guy, Blaine. Step up and win us this game, this big game. And he just failed.
He blew it.
Couldn't do it. And I think there were some tears welling up after that game because he knew that you're probably not going to get another chance at my age and at this point. But enough about Blaine Gabbert. We're not here to talk about
Super Bowl champion Blaine Gabbert. You put some respect on his name, Johnny. Ben, is Des Fitzpatrick going to get cut?
Oh, I at this point I do think so. He's firmly on the bubble at the very least. I mean, that practice he had, what we're recording this Monday, that practice he had Sunday just was not good at all.
Woo!
On top of the preseason game where he didn't play until the second half and did absolutely nothing. And then up until that, all those the 2 weeks of training camp practices, he just hasn't done, a whole lot in a room where you have to make plays to stand out because it's been the most competitive, room in training camp for the Titans. Guys are fighting for spots. Guys are making plays. There are a lot of conversations. Will 6-7 guys make the team at that position just because of how deep it's been? And he's at the bottom of the pecking order. Just in terms of of performances just throughout training camp. And there's a lot of talk of, well, you can't cut a 4th round pick. Well, I mean, you can. I mean, it's not a super common thing, right, in a 4th rounder's first training camp. But when I was covering the Seahawks in those 3 years, they cut a 4th rounder once in those 3 years. I don't know how that percentage would kind of stack up to just kind of league average, but it happens, right? It would sting for sure with the Titans because, first of all, if I remember correctly, he had like a 6th, 7th round grade, but the Titans selected him not only in the 4th round, but they traded up to get him. So there's definitely the sting of that, and that has to be something that's going to be in the minds of the Titans decision makers when they have to whittle down this roster. But man, with the way some of those other guys are playing, I don't know if you can keep him. It's going to be I know I don't want to be in that room to make that decision. But if you had to ask me now, I'd say no. The last roster projection I put out, I didn't have him on there. So it's an uphill battle, for him. At this point, he needs to show something and show something fast. I think, this week in Tampa is going to be really, really important for him.
Johnny, he's losing snaps to D3 Berry College Mason Kinsey, who, by the way, balled, like no respectfully to Mason Kinsey. But it cannot be like this with the numbers that they have at wide receiver. You cannot cut Chester Rogers for Des Fitzpatrick. You cannot cut Mason Kinsey, really, even for Des Fitzpatrick. You can make the argument for, NWI or Reising McMath, who Reising McMath has not done anything really outside of the first day with some, highlight reel plays where he goes up and gets it in the end zone. It's the numbers aren't there to justify keeping him. And John Robinson is not above punting on these dudes if it's getting to the point where he thinks that they've just got to cut bait and move on. But I mean, for nothing more than it's his fault if they cut Des Fitzpatrick. Do I think Des Fitzpatrick finds a way to hang around? I don't know if anybody in the league would pick him up if they cut him, if he's a practice squad candidate, but I didn't think that anything would happen with Luke Falk a couple of years ago when he ended up in Miami, 2 days afterwards.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about Des Fitzpatrick is he picked the absolute wrong year to be a rookie that needs a project rookie for the Titans that needs a lot of polish. Most other years, the Titans wide receiver depth has not been a strength of this team. And you could say, okay, we'll keep Des Fitzpatrick as a 6th wide receiver, basically a glorified practice squad guy, keep him throughout the year, let him learn. So on. This is not that year. This is the deepest group of Titans wide receivers I can, ever remember seeing. And you can easily go through 7, 8, 9 guys and say, this guy has earned a roster spot, and Des Fitzpatrick is not one of those guys, unfortunately. I just did a 53 that came out this morning. I did not have Dez Fitzpatrick as one of my 7 guys on the roster either, and maybe the only silver lining, if you don't keep Dez Fitzpatrick, is that he hasn't really perked up anybody's attention. And as you say, maybe if you're a deep team with wide receivers and you have an open spot and you can say, we can just keep this guy, we can let him work all week, again, like a glorified practice squad guy, maybe some team like that picks him up. But other than that, what has he done where other teams are going to say, I gotta have that Des Fitzpatrick. So maybe you can just put him on the practice squad if you release him. But he just hasn't done. And we've seen Marcus Johnson have some great days, and he looks like, he's playing as well as he ever has in his career. Chester Rogers, has the extra value of being a return guy, especially in the punt game. This team apparently loves NWI, the Hoosier, Nick Westbrook Keenan. I'm still a little shaky on the love affair there. I understand he's probably a tremendous special teams guy and blocker.
Johnny, we went to the same college. I don't like this guy as much as they like this guy. Like, what is this? He physically fights with the football instead of catching it. He's hand fighting with the football instead of catching this damn thing.
Yeah, and you think that tends to be an important part of being a receiver, but I don't know. But
what do I know?
And then a guy like a Racing McMath, honestly, I think he would be more likely to get picked up if you cut him simply because of special teams values. He's a big, fast, physical guy. And Mike Vrabel has talked about the impact they want him to have on special teams. So, maybe he's a gunner and a kickoff, coverage kind of guy as well. So, boy, Dez, unless you perk up here in the next couple of weeks, it's, or who knows about injuries, but as of right now, I don't think the numbers look very good for him.
Zero urgency is what I observe out there right now. Like he just doesn't. Go ahead, Johnny.
I was going to say to that point. You remember the day before, yesterday when we asked Mike Vrabel, said, what does he have to do to get more snaps, to get more attention? And Mike Vrabel, who is not a guy to single out players really one way or the other too often, was very succinct and said a lot. And I kind of said, can you maybe expand on that just a little bit? And he emphasized it even more, a lot. And you would think, maybe the next day, okay, maybe if this guy sees those comments, hears those comments, it's a little kick in the pants, a little motivation and so forth. And that's the day, as Ben just mentioned, he goes out there and drops at least 2 passes in one drill and gets his hands on another. That
3.
He could have had. Yeah, exactly.
Back to back with the GM watching. I watched them send him back through the same drill, and he let it bounce off his hands a 3rd time. And I went back and look at Wyatt's. I read everybody's practice observations just in case I miss anything, and I saw Wyatt had him, rebounding a little bit later, drills I didn't necessarily see. So I want to be fair. But yeah, the urgency is just completely lacking at this point with that.
Yeah. Guy. So if Mike Vrabel was trying to send a message at all, that message did not appear to be received as best we can tell.
Ben Arthur, not necessarily new, but new to us, Titans reporter for the Tennessean. John Glennon of Broadway Sports at Glennon Sports is where you follow Johnny. At Ben, it's not Ben E. Arthur, it's Ben Y. Arthur, right? Because I read it every time as Benny Arthur when I read your Twitter handle.
Yeah, it depends on how you're feeling. Like some people say Benny Arthur, some people say Benny Arthur. It kind of just depends. I mean, I say Benny Arthur. So it's just like Ben Arthur, just put the Y in between, just one word.
That became entirely too complicated for the end of this podcast. You were doing so well on your debut until you botched the landing. It's okay. Check these guys out, Broadway Sports and the Tennessean. Thank you as always, boys.
Thanks, bud. Appreciate it.
Hour 2 in the books. Coming up next, Titans linebacker David Long is going to join us, and Greg Cosell and myself, we're going to have a conversation about Rashaan Evans, Tom Brady, this Tampa Bay defense, and then a deep dive into Ryan Tannehill.
Hear every Titans play with Mike Keefe and Coach Dave McGinnis on The Call.
Touchdown, Titans! Your home for Titans football.
104.5 The Zone.
today. Wide receivers, linebackers, quarterbacks coming off that open practice at Nissan Stadium last night. It was good to see a lot of you guys out there. In this part of the conversation with Greg Cosell of NFL Films, we kind of took a look at Rashaan Evans before David Long joins us in the 12:20 hour, or in the 12:20 segment, because this linebacker room is pretty interesting, and we're going to need to find out a lot about the depth of this position, understanding that, by the end of the season, Rashaan Evans and Jayon Brown could both be unrestricted free agents. So this is the conversation with Greg Cosell about Rashaan Evans, and then a little bit on Tom Brady and this Tampa Bay defense before the Titans face them in joint practices this week. Welcome into the install with Greg Cosell of NFL Films. I am Buck Reising. I'm along for the ride just like you are. Greg is here to make us all smarter on all things football. And today, Titans quarterback Ryan Tannehill. Greg, what's going on, my man?
How you doing, Buck? What's going on? How things at Titans camp? Things are moving along?
No, because it's 110 degrees and Mike Vrabel is a sadist, so we're basically holding football practice on the surface of the sun out here. But yeah,
it's a little steamy down in Music City, huh?
We are surviving. I don't know about thriving, but we are surviving to this point. I'm just glad I'm not one of the guys out there in football pads and a helmet. It would not be a pleasant experience.
Are we all making now bold, definitive statements as to what happens with every single play in practice?
Oh, hell yes. Absolutely.
Of course. Yeah.
Josh Reynolds has no place on the roster now. Julio Jones' career so far with the Titans a disaster because he hadn't practiced in like 6 days. We are officially in hot take season, which is chef's kiss for sports talk radio.
Every play, there's a definitive statement to be made.
God forbid Ryan Tannehill throw a training camp interception, Greg, because then the whole thing is going to come crashing down. So today we are going to focus on Ryan Tannehill. And Greg, I guess just to set the scene for the audience, for the context of this discussion, how do you kind of approach your film study at this point in the season right now?
Well, one of the things I'm fortunate enough to do in the off season is kind of focus more on situations. During the season, particularly due to my NFL matchup show, I have to try to watch as many games as I can each and every week. And it's harder doing that because obviously there's only a certain amount of time, and probably during the season, Buck, I work 65, 70 hours a week, but there's still only a certain amount of time that it's tough for me, let's say, to take a player like a Ryan Tannehill when it gets to be week 7 and say, okay, I'm just going to watch all of Ryan Tannehill on third down. I can't really do that. Now I'm watching him each and every week, but when you can sit and watch one down and distance or a specific situation or all explosive pass plays, whatever the case may be, that I can do in the off season much more so than I can do during the season. So what I did with Tannehill is I looked up his numbers just out of curiosity. He was unbelievable on second down, believe it or not, and he was very good on first down and not so great on third down. So I kind of broke it up by looking at the first and second down explosive plays, which I think I did as maybe 12 plus yards for a pass play. Teams usually look at explosive pass plays as either 15 or 20, but I think I did 12 just so I could see more plays. And then what I did on third down, where he and the Titans were not very good this season, he was much better in 2019. And we'll get into that. I think there's a reason for that. But what I did on third down is I looked at all the 6+ yard plays. And I think there were, 100 of them, give or take. So that's the way I did it, just to kind of keep myself amused, Buck.
It is though. It's a fascinating study. Amusement, I don't know if I would describe that for everybody, Greg, but certainly a more focused way to go about the study of an individual player such as Ryan Tannehill or any of these guys who you go through your film study with. So let's start with the player himself. Ryan Tannehill, we joked earlier in earlier episodes of this podcast about top 10 quarterback lists and all of those things. But Ryan Tannehill, the anatomy of the player himself, how do you kind of evaluate his skill set on principle when you watch him outside of the context of the scheme? Or is that even possible outside of the context?
Yeah, I mean, you can look at traits and attributes, but then obviously he's in a specific scheme.
Right.
I mean, he's a big kid, good size, as you know, you've been around him, throws the ball well. He's athletic. So he's got good traits. Don't forget he was a top 10 pick in a draft after playing quarterback for only 2 years in college, starting out as a wide receiver. So he has the traits and attributes that you like to see in a quarterback. And obviously there's a much greater emphasis today on a quarterback's ability, particularly when it gets to be third down, to get outside the pocket and make plays outside the structure of the offense. He didn't really make many of those this year, but he certainly has that ability. So when you just look at his traits in a vacuum, as an abstract discussion, he has good traits. But then you have to put him in the context of an offense, because every quarterback is a system quarterback. I know people think of system in a pejorative, negative way, Buck, but every quarterback is a system quarterback because that's how it's taught. Every coach has a system. And we know what the Titans' system is. Tannehill has now been a starter, I believe, since week 7 in 2019?
That's
like
right.
that.
The worst football game, Greg, I've ever seen played. Week 6 against the Denver Broncos, 16-0 they lost when Marcus Mariota got benched.
Right. He came in, I guess, in the second half, but he became a starter the next week.
Correct, against the Chargers.
And has obviously not given up the job since. And he's in a defined system that starts with the run game and features, particularly in normal down and distance situations such as 1st and 10, 2nd and 4, those kinds of situations. It's heavy with the use of base personnel. Keep in mind, last year in 2020, they played out of 12 personnel, meaning 1 back and 2 tight ends. The highest percentage in the AFC and the second highest percentage in the NFL behind the Philadelphia Eagles. So this is an offense that by choice plays out of base personnel and starts with the run game. So he's in a very clearly defined offense that's run based.
Yes, and certainly something that becomes much debate about who amplifies whom more, whether it's Derrick Henry in the run game or Ryan Tannehill and what he's opened up for them as an offense in total. But that's not the conversation we're here to have. So let's start with go ahead, Greg.
Well, just to comment on that, it's very interesting you mentioned that, because one of the things that really stood out to me when I watched the 1st and 2nd down explosives was the impact, the play action, the run action. I'm going to use the term run action because run action is where the offensive line actually run blocks initially. Because don't forget, defensive players, particularly second-level defenders, linebackers, box safeties, they are reading offensive line movement. So run action is different than play action. Run action is where the offensive line clearly shows run action and run blocking initially. And the impact that had on second-level defenders was really extreme. And it was not only when Derrick Henry was in the game. It happened even when other backs were in the game, because that's the foundation of the Titans offense. And that's how defenses, when they game plan to play the Titans, that's how they're taught that week of practice. So second-level defenders really attacked the run action hard, and they were more often than not late to their underneath zone coverage responsibilities. And what that does is that creates a big void between the deeper defenders, the safeties, and the underneath defenders, the linebackers in zone coverage. So those voids were really defined for Tannehill to make throws.
And certainly not just make throws, but make plays with his legs. I've seen him many times scramble for 15, 20 yards off of those run action plays because of the way that whoever the runner is sucks up those second-level defenders and allows for those plays to be made by Ryan Tannehill. But let's start with 1st down specifically, because in 2019, no quarterback converted on a higher percentage, got you a 1st down more often on his dropbacks on 1st down, 41% of the time, than Ryan Tannehill. Those stats from PFF. How did you see that change, if at all, from 2019 to 2020, Greg?
Well, that 1st and 2nd down didn't change dramatically. 3rd down did. But 1st and 2nd down, and this just speaks to what I said about their emphasis on the run action pass game. And they do a really nice job with misdirection and counter route concepts off outside zone run action, because it has the look of boot, of what we call boot action or designed movement. And that look dictates boot rules by 2nd and 3rd level defenders. And what that does, if you show misdirection off of that with your routes. See, normally the way it works, Buck, and I think this will be clear for people to visualize.
Sure.
If the quarterback is going to fake, let's say, an outside zone handoff to Henry to the left, and then boot to the right, to his right, his strong hand, what almost always happens is you get sort of an intermediate route that comes from the side of the run action to the same side that the quarterback is booting. Can you picture that?
Absolutely.
Okay. So underneath defenders are taught boot rules that even if they react to the run action, they immediately snap their head around and they're looking for that receiver who's coming across the field to the same side as the boot, the same side that Tannehill is moving to. So what happens is that's the way they're taught. So if you have a route that then goes back the other way, in other words, if that receiver starts his route as if he's doing what I just said, and then immediately goes back the other way, in other words, away from the boot, the defense is kind of stuck because they're playing their boot rules. And the Titans did a really nice job with that. And it kind of blows up all the boot rules of second-level defenders. And the Titans are really good at those kinds of things. And what that does, and the reason they're so good on first and second down, when it's obviously a normal down and distance situation, is that defines the throw for Ryan Tannehill. It's not really a difficult read. It's defined. So he knows where he's going to go with the football. And they do a really, really good job with that. So their run game, their straight play action, their boot run action, they're just really, really good at that. And it allows Tannehill to be really efficient with, a lot of people call it processing, what I call it elimination and isolation, meaning he immediately knows where not to go, and then within the structure, isolates where to go. He's really good at that, and the tape showed that on first and second down.
And certainly Arthur Smith, one of his best traits as a play caller was creating those situations and strategically implementing that into the game plans. The reason that we've seen him be able to scheme up so many explosive plays for Ryan Tannehill and that offense. How much, Greg, is he helped Tannehill? How much is he helped by the personnel that they have on offense, and how, when you're talking about explosive plays, whether it be first, second, or third down, I guess, before we get into more of the specifics about what broke down for him on third down, third and six this year, third and 6+ this year.
Right.
With the wide receivers that they have, the tight end that they previously had in Jonnu Smith, how much of that was yards after the catch that was generating these explosive plays based on the person?
Well, I think the number one guy there was A.J. Brown.
Right.
Because so many times, as I said, what you would see is you'd see the run action, and there's different kinds of run action. There's what I call bang run action, where it'd be literally a quick 3-step drop off a quick fake, or a short 5-step drop. And then how many times, and you can picture this, Buck, where they'd hit A.J. Brown on either a slant route or a glance route, which is just a little longer of a slant. And he had a lot of space. And he's one of the best run after catch receivers in the NFL. And it sure helps your statistics when you throw a 7-yard pass that becomes a 30-yard gain or a 60-yard touchdown. So A.J. Brown, of course, is outstanding run after catch. And certainly, I'm sure they envision Julio Jones being that kind of guy as well this year, when the regular season starts. But so the key is space. But ball placement is critical for run after catch, because the quarterback is just as or more responsible for run after catch as the receiver. In this case, it's a beautiful combination of the two, because the structure of the scheme presented the space, and then you have A.J. Brown, who's as good as there is run after catch.
Coming up next, Titans linebacker David Long is going to join us, and then we will have a discussion with Greg Cosell of NFL Films about Ryan Tannehill, the anatomy of the quarterback. You guys aren't going to want to miss it. It's football junkie porn.
Coming up today on the 3HL.
We'll talk Titans football with Jim Wyatt from TennesseeTitans.com.
And we got to talk numbers, sports gambling numbers. Alan Bell from Sportsline joins us.
And we got a new event, 2 for Tuesdays.
What in the world is that?
I just came up with that.
All right, we'll do it.
I'm in.
It's Tuesday, right?
Today, starting at 3 p.m. on 104.5 The Zone.
Good, man. It was a good start, to the season. It's preseason, of course, but it was good to get back out there against somebody other than my teammates.
Yeah. So what is that first opportunity against an opponent like when you spent so much time? You've been through a couple of training camps now.
Yeah.
What's that first opportunity like to go against somebody who you don't see every day?
I would just say, we don't tackle in training camp or anything like that. So that gives us a chance, go live tackling, work on a lot of stuff we've been working on during the off season. During practice, training camp, installs, the game speed. It's a little different during the game. So making sure we have a lot of new pieces as well. So just getting us out there, getting us, accumulated to, the season or what it's going to be.
I talked to a lot of your defensive teammates, certainly, about the fact that you got so many new guys out here. How has that been to adapt as a unit as you try and make strides from a year ago? Obviously, that being one of the bigger weaknesses for this team a year ago.
You saying as in, like, what it's been like, trying to get us
just kind of
back?
assimilate, communicate, find ways to gel with each other on the field, understanding that the personnel is new.
But that just really starts with, everybody being on the same page, everybody paying attention in meetings, everybody communicating, which was a big factor for us, going into camp, making sure we all communicated. So I feel like, we've done that well in training camp. I feel like it translated over to good to the game. And I feel like that's why we played well on defense.
Now, I asked Chester Rogers. He just sat down with me. I just asked him this question about his punt return. How many messages you have on your phone after that INT?
Oh,
people blowing you up?
Yeah. To me, it was a lot of love. I appreciate all the love. But, especially for my family and stuff, they traveled down there, and got to see that in person as well. So, it was a good feeling.
Oh, no doubt. From the air? Well, you're from Cincinnati, right?
Yeah, I'm from Cincinnati, but,
they road trip down?
I have family in Atlanta as well.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
Did you get a chance to catch up with them after the game at all?
After the game, it was quick,
Yeah.
Hi, thanks for coming and stuff like that. But, it was good seeing them, though.
Now, who gets the interception ball? Because you brought it to the podium after when we met with you afterwards. Do you keep that or you give that to the family?
No, I'm going to give it to my mom. I told her I was going to give it to her. I couldn't see her after the game, though, but, whenever I get to see her, I told her I was going to give it to her.
So the interception is the highlight, but obviously you have to put yourself in that position to make a play.
Right.
Kind of walk us through that play for you and what you were seeing.
Well, it was third and long, a passing situation, obviously. So, I already had started back. I really just kept my eyes on the quarterback, Really, and I stayed back, and stayed disciplined with my eyes. He ended up throwing the long ball instead of the check down, which I thought he was going to do. But, I was just in place to make a play, I'm just glad I was able to accomplish that.
So when you went back, now you've had the opportunity to watch some of the film, meet with your coaches, meet with your unit. What kind of teaching points did you take away from that game?
As far as me, I feel like more conditioning and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I feel like I was good as far as, bringing people with me, make sure everybody's on the same page. Monty, young guys, making sure, they got a taste of it, make sure we, go back in and look at any mistakes that we've made, and build off of it.
You've had a really trial by fire career coming in here as a rookie.
Yeah.
Remember that Chiefs game specifically? You forced the fumble that Rashawn returns. You're in the playoff game against Baltimore. You absolutely ball out. You're making plays all over the place, stuffing Lamar on fourth down.
Yeah.
Wait, walk me through that rookie year for you. I guess starting with that Chiefs game and kind of what your mindset was as a rookie player.
Well, we always, when I was here, it was always talking about, like, being comfortable. Are you comfortable yet? It really was never about comfortable. I knew I could play, with these guys. It was more about getting more familiar with, the different coverages and, like, the different defenses that we had. So it took me a minute to get, good with that. And I also watching those guys in front of me. And really, I was just eager to, just to see or figure out my role here, my rookie year. Not knowing what that was. So whenever I got the chance, go out there and make plays, that's what I, try to do every time. But that was my rookie year. It felt long, man. It felt way longer.
It's as long a season as they've had here in a long time.
Yeah,
no wonder.
Most definitely. And then, being thrown in the fire in the playoffs, when just be ready when your name is called, I've always had that mindset. So, the rookie year was weird, but I had a good experience with it. I think it prepared me for where I'm at now.
So that Chiefs game is as wild a game as I've seen at Nissan Stadium. You got
Yeah.
Mahomes' first game back. He's on a bum knee. He's still ripping 60, 70-yard passes down the field, jump passes to Mecole Hardman and all kinds of stuff. When you make that play, do you kind of do you remember that at all, or do you kind of black out a little bit?
No, I remember everything about
Do you really?
it. Because, I remember everything about it because I'm over here celebrating before Rashawn even get to the touchdown.
Oh, so did you see him take off?
Yeah, I see him take off, but before he get, I'm looking at the sideline instead of going down there. But, I was just so hyped. But, I remember that play. We was arguing about who got the ball out at first. The D-line was trying to take it away at first. But, I remember it well.
Yeah. David Long here with us on 104.5 The Zone. With this linebacker group, you've as we talked about in your rookie year, you've gotten opportunities. Unfortunately, Jayon dealing with some stuff throughout the course of your time here, giving you those opportunities. How have you kind of seen your game grow from those first moments in big spots like the Chiefs and the Ravens to seeing an extended role a year ago?
Well, it's been amazing seeing my, me personally seeing my, my personal growth within, especially like my mental, and just working on my game, passing, as far like the interception, just really taking the coaching, actually like translating it to the field. I have very high expectations of myself, so like if I was to tell you, you'd probably be like, this guy is tripping, but I have so much high expectations of myself, those. I'm really hard on myself, so for me to go out there, to put those things together and actually, see growth in myself was everything to me.
No, I mean you talk about the expectations that you guys set for yourself as professional athletes. I have no concept of what that looks like. My if I can wake up talking to the microphone for 3 hours a day, that's a success for me. But I guess speaking of those expectations, what kind of goals do you set for yourself professionally? Because this is something that every professional athlete has to hold themselves to a standard if they're to survive in a league like this.
Right. I think the highest of the highest. I mean, I don't really want to say it right now, but I hold myself very high standards. As far as my teammates as well. I think we all supposed to hold each other to those standards. How we want to play and how we want to attack the season. So personally, me, I have a different type of goals. So
yeah, what's the linebacker room like right now? Because Jayon's got a big personality, Rashawn's got a big personality.
Yeah.
I don't know a ton of the other guys that are in there with you this year. It seems like you all have a pretty good time.
Yeah, we have. I've been blessed to be a part of great rooms. Especially going into my third year. Like it's no none of that. No bad vibes or anything. It's always laughs and everybody teaching each other. Even the young guys asking questions. Me still being in the great area of young and old, me trying to help out and still learn at the same time. So I think everybody is just really coming in to work and trying to figure out a role on the team.
Titans linebacker David Long, kind enough to give us some of his time out here at training camp. Buddy, get out of here. You had a long day of work. I'm sorry about the bugs and the weather. It's a mess out here, but I appreciate you sitting down.
Thanks for having me.
No doubt. That was Titans linebacker David Long live from training camp before the team travels down to Tampa Bay today, and joint practices begin with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Next, Greg Cosell of NFL Films on Ryan Tannehill and breaking him down from quarterback to system fit to what made him so successful on early downs last season. We are officially in hot take season, which is chef's kiss for Sports Talk Radio.
Every play, there's a definitive statement to be made.
God forbid Ryan Tannehill throw a training camp interception, Greg, and the whole thing is going to come crashing down. So today we are going to focus on Ryan Tannehill. And Greg, I guess just to set the scene for the audience, for the context of this discussion, how do you kind of approach your film study at this point in the season right now?
Well, one of the things I'm fortunate enough to do in the off season is kind of focus more on situations. During the season, particularly due to my NFL matchup show, I have to try to watch as many games as I can each and every week. And it's harder doing that because obviously there's only a certain amount of time. And probably during the season, Buck, I work 65, 70 hours a week, but there's still only a certain amount of time that it's tough for me, let's say, to take a player like a Ryan Tannehill when it gets to be week 7 and say, okay, I'm just going to watch all of Ryan Tannehill on third down. I can't really do that. Now I'm watching him each and every week, but when you can sit and watch one down in distance or a specific situation or all explosive pass plays, whatever the case may be, that I can do in the offseason much more so than I can do during the season. So what I did with Tannehill is I looked up his numbers just out of curiosity. He was unbelievable on second down, believe it or not, and he was very good on first down and not so great on third down. So I kind of broke it up by looking at the first and second down explosive plays, which I think I did as maybe 12 plus yards for a pass play. Teams usually look at explosive pass plays as either 15 or 20, but I think I did 12 just so I could see more plays. And then what I did on third down, where he and the Titans were not very good this season. He was much better in 2019. And we'll get into that. I think there's a reason for that. But what I did on third down is I looked at all the 6+ yard plays. And I think there were, 100 of them, give or take. So that's the way I did it, just to kind of keep myself amused, Buck.
It is though. It's a fascinating study. Amusement, I don't know if I would describe that for everybody, Greg, but certainly a more focused way to go about the study of an individual player, such as Ryan Tannehill or any of these guys who you go through your film study with. So let's start with the player himself. Ryan Tannehill. We joked earlier in earlier episodes of this podcast about top 10 quarterback lists and all of these things. But Ryan Tannehill, the anatomy of the player himself, how do you kind of evaluate his skill set on principle when you watch him outside of the context of the scheme? Or is that even possible outside of the context?
Yeah, you can look at traits and attributes, but then obviously he's in a specific scheme.
Right.
He's a big kid, good size, as you know, you've been around him, throws the ball well, he's athletic. So he's got good traits. Don't forget he was a top 10 pick in a draft after playing quarterback for only 2 years in college, starting out as a wide receiver. So he has the traits and attributes that you like to see in a quarterback. And obviously there's a much greater emphasis today on a quarterback's ability, particularly when it gets to be third down, to get outside the pocket and make plays outside the structure of the offense. He didn't really make many of those this year, but he certainly has that ability. So when you just look at his traits in a vacuum, as an abstract discussion, he has good traits. But then you have to put him in the context of an offense, because every quarterback is a system quarterback. I know people think of system in a pejorative, negative way, Buck, but every quarterback is a system quarterback because that's how it's taught. Every coach has a system. And we know what the Titans' system is. Tannehill has now been a starter, I believe, since week 7 in 2019?
That's right. The worst football game, Greg, I've ever seen played. Week 6 against the Denver Broncos, 16-0 they lost when Marcus Mariota got back.
Right. He came in, I guess, in the second half, but he became a starter the next week.
Correct, against the Chargers.
And has obviously not given up the job since. And he's in a defined system that starts with the run game and features, particularly in normal down and distance situations such as 1st and 10, 2nd and 4, those kinds of situations. It's heavy with the use of base personnel. Keep in mind, last year in 2020, they played out of 12 personnel, meaning 1 back and 2 tight ends. The highest percentage in the AFC and the second highest percentage in the NFL behind the Philadelphia Eagles. So this is an offense that by choice plays out of base personnel and starts with the run game. So he's in a very clearly defined offense that's run based.
Yes, and certainly something that becomes much debate about who amplifies whom more, whether it's Derrick Henry in the run game or Ryan Tannehill and what he's opened up for them as an offense in total. But that's not the conversation we're here to have. So let's start with go ahead, Greg.
Well, just to comment on that, it's very interesting you mentioned that, because one of the things that really stood out to me when I watched the first and second down explosives was the impact, the play action, the run action. I'm going to use the term run action because run action is where the offensive line actually run blocks initially. Because don't forget, defensive players, particularly second-level defenders, linebackers, box safeties, they are reading offensive line movement. So run action is different than play action. Run action is where the offensive line clearly shows run action and run blocking initially. And the impact that that had on second level defenders was really extreme. And it was not only when Derrick Henry was in the game, it happened even when other backs were in the game, because that's the foundation of the Titans offense. And that's how defenses, when they game plan to play the Titans, that's how they're taught that week of practice. So second level defenders really attacked the run action hard, and they were more often than not late to their underneath zone coverage responsibilities. And what that does is that creates a big void between the deeper defenders, the safeties, and the underneath defenders, the linebackers in zone coverage. So those voids were really defined for Tannehill to make throws.
And certainly not just make throws, but make plays with his legs. I've seen him many times scramble for 15, 20 yards off of those run action plays because of the way that whoever the runner is sucks up those second level defenders and allows for those plays to be made by Ryan Tannehill. But let's start with first down specifically, because in 2019, no quarterback converted on a higher percentage, got you a first down more often on his dropbacks on first down, 41% of the time, than Ryan Tannehill. Those stats from PFF. How did you see that change, if at all, from 2019 to 2020, Greg?
Well, that first and second down didn't change dramatically. Third down did. But first and second down, and this just speaks to what I said about their emphasis on the run action pass game. And they do a really nice job with misdirection and counter route concepts off outside zone run action, because it has the look of boot, of what we call boot action or designed movement. And that look dictates boot rules by second and third level defenders. And what that does, if you show misdirection off of that with your routes, see, normally the way it works, Buck, and I think this will be clear for people to visualize.
Sure.
If the quarterback is going to fake, let's say, an outside zone handoff to Henry to the left, and then boot to the right, to his right, his strong hand, what almost always happens is you get sort of an intermediate route that comes from the side of the run action to the same side that the quarterback is booting. Can you picture that?
Absolutely.
Okay. So underneath defenders are taught boot rules that even if they react to the run action, they immediately snap their head around and they're looking for that receiver who's coming across the field to the same side as the boot, the same side that Tannehill is moving to. So what happens is that's the way they're taught. So if you have a route that then goes back the other way, in other words, if that receiver starts his route as if he's doing what I just said and then immediately goes back the other way, in other words, away from the boot, the defense is kind of stuck because they're playing their boot rules. And the Titans did a really nice job with that. And it kind of blows up all the boot rules of second level defenders. And the Titans are really good at those kinds of things. And what that does, and the reason they're so good on first and second down, when it's obviously a normal down and distance situation, is that defines the throw for Ryan Tannehill. It's not really a difficult read. It's defined. So he knows where he's going to go with the football. And they do a really, really good job with that. So their run game, their straight play action, their boot run action, they're just really, really good at that. And it allows Tannehill to be really efficient with, a lot of people call it processing, what I call it elimination and isolation, meaning he immediately knows where not to go, and then within the structure, isolates where to go. He's really good at that, and the tape showed that on first and second down.
Coming up next, polls, and we close out the show before we hit the road for Tampa Bay. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
The Titans play 4 preseason quarters against Tom Brady's Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And your flagship for Titans radio has the game. Comeback foil! Saturday night at 6:30 on your home for Titans football. 104.5 The Zone.
Titans linebacker, and Greg Cosell of NFL Films. If you missed a minute of today's show, you can check it out via the podcast, The Buck Reising Show, in your favorite podcast app. Don't forget, 615 sessions out today as well, and a new episode of The Install with Greg Cosell comes your way tomorrow on all of the rookie quarterbacks that we saw in week 1 of the preseason. But first, we do polls.
Whose fault is it? Urban Meyer, Tim Tebow's, or whoever bought a jersey? We've got about 500 votes so far. 61% say it's whoever bought a jersey. 26% blame Urban Meyer. 13% blame the man himself, Tim Tebow.
Okay, I talked about this earlier in the show. Tim Tebow broke me. I feel bad for Tim Tebow. I really do. Tim Tebow, everything about him seems legitimately genuine. It is corny. That's fine. I am not here to question the man's the way that he carries himself, the supernatural ability that he has, this gravitational pull. All I know is that I read his tweet today being cut from the Jags, and I was made to feel sad. The real plague upon society is anybody who bought a Tim Tebow jersey, Jags jersey, for the month and a half that he was on the team. It is completely unacceptable. I will not say anything more because then I will get in trouble.
John Miller says, I'm going to blame Tebow. Tebow knew damn well and good he wasn't prepared for the position and that it wouldn't work, but he couldn't let his ego and his competitiveness go. He knew that there were players that had a chance to actually make the team and said, F them.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to that, right? And nobody is going to be happy on this, no matter what the solution is. I thought Jim Nagy of the Senior Bowl put it really well when he said about Tim Tebow and kind of his return to the NFL. Respect to him, Tim Tebow, for putting himself back in the arena. Zero shame in that. I think there is something admirable about it, and I think it is also the kind of thing that sees Peyton Manning not want to let go at the end, even though he's throwing 9 touchdowns and 17 interceptions and needing to ride on the back of Von Miller to win the Super Bowl.
Puka says, after looking at the blocks, I wonder how much Tebow's heart was in it. Really, those blocks couldn't be a surprise to Urban. He could have done Tebow a favor and talked him into walking away before the game.
Yeah, the blocks were a tough scene. I think you had to cut him.
I don't know if that's a lack of effort. That's just Tim Tebow not being capable of playing tight end in the NFL.
That's Tim Tebow blocking with his eyes closed because he's terrified because he's much, much smaller than the 300-pound rage monster across from him.
Josh Reynolds' Achilles issue, big deal, little deal, or no deal. Now, this is where you can never make fun of me again for making a mistake on your polls because you spell no deal, no dealp with a P at the end. Puka has called you out saying dealp. Well, she called me out because she thought that I wrote the poll. Said, Lucas Panzica, did you learn spelling from me or did Buck do his own work?
This is how we know that it's me because I don't know what's happening to me, by the way, lately. My spelling has just been horrendous. It has been a complete and total disaster. So that's how you can tell that it's me doing the polls because I have been botching things left and right. The wrong version of here when talking to John Glennon on Twitter. It's been a tough scene for me. I think I need more sleep.
Well, the results were 54% say his Achilles issue is a little deal, 37% big deal, 9% no deal.
I hate you so much for that. What else do we have?
What Titans position group did you most enjoy watching at the stadium practice? AJ says Ficken and the kick returns. Ruben says the holders.
Well, it's all special teams for the people.
Special teams. How about that?
Well, I mean, listen, they weren't even wearing shoulder pads yesterday. They were, it was a very, very jog-through-esque thing. But, I mean, I don't know how anybody could not go out there and watch the wide receivers and not really enjoy the hell out of it. That's going to do it for the polls and for this show today. Check it out if you missed any of it. As we said earlier in the podcast, I'm heading down to Tampa Bay, and the radio show will be live from Tampa. Joint practices with the Buccaneers tomorrow here on 104.5 The Zone. Our coverage presented by Scoreboard Bar and Grill. Very appreciative of them in that regard. I will talk to you guys tomorrow, prime time tonight. If you're watching on the A to Z show, that'll be in Tampa Bay as well. In the meantime, Blaine and Mickey are going to keep you entertained.
Mike Keith is excited for another season of Titans football. Bam! Yeah, we know how you feel, Mike. Catch Mike Keith and Coach Dave McGinnis with The Call on Titans Radio.
Your home for Titans.